Most films train us to do the same thing. We find the person the camera follows, and we decide, that's who matters. That's who survives. Alfonso Cuarón's Children of Men knows we'll do this. In fact, it's counting on it. The film opens in 2027. No child has been born on Earth in 18 years. The title comes from Psalm 90, a prayer about how brief and fragile human life is. Most people hear it at funerals. The youngest person alive, a celebrity just for existing, has been stabbed to death in Buenos Aires, and the entire planet is mourning. Theo Farron walks into a coffee shop, watches the news for about 4 seconds, grabs his espresso, and leaves. He doesn't cry, he doesn't react. He spikes his coffee with whiskey on the sidewalk while everyone else falls apart. He's the one the camera chooses, so we choose him. It's a British dystopia that doesn't bother with the poetry of 1984 or the spectacle of V for Vendetta. It just looks like the news. Then a bomb goes off in a cafe he just walked out of. There's no slow motion, no dramatic score, just a ringing in his ears and smoke and a woman stumbling out holding her own severed arm. The camera doesn't cut, it holds. One long take, no edits, no escape. Emmanuel Lubezki, the cinematographer who'd later win back-to-back Academy Awards for Gravity and Birdman, shoots this film like a witness, not a storyteller. The world detonates around Theo, and the film just watches. It doesn't protect him, it stays near him. That's a different thing entirely. We all do this. Lock onto whoever the camera locks onto. Assume they're the one who matters. Psychologists call it narrative centrality bias, but it doesn't need a name. We know exactly what it feels like. We attach, and we ride. So here's the question most people never think to ask. Why does Theo die in Children of Men? He completes the mission, he saves the girl, he gets her to the boat. In any other film, that's the person who survives. But Cuarón isn't making just any other film. This movie doesn't follow the future, it follows the person who doesn't get to be part of it. That pattern, that removal, that is Children of Men. The camera is tethered to Theo from the very first frame to the last. His face, his breathing, his fear. But the future, the thing the whole story is oriented around, doesn't belong to him. It belongs to Key, played by Claire Hope Ashitay, in what might be the most quietly radical piece of casting in 21st century science fiction. We're not watching the person who carries the future, we're watching the person who gets left behind by it. The film never announces this. No scene where Theo realizes he's disposable. No speech. Cuarón just builds it into the order of who lives and who dies, and who's still standing when the credits roll. Theo starts where most reluctant heroes start. He's checked out. Government desk job, a London that looks familiar in the worst way, cages full of immigrants on the streets, propaganda billboards, a police state that runs on fear and paperwork. He's not fighting the system, he's filing reports inside of it. Then his ex-wife shows up. Julian runs the Fishes, a militant immigrant rights group the government calls terrorists. She doesn't ask Theo to join the cause. She asks him for transit papers. She needs someone with government access to help move a girl to the coast, and Theo is the only person she trusts enough to ask. He says yes, not because he believes in anything, but because she offers him money, and because she's Julian, and there's still something there he can't name. That first yes is the hinge. It looks like a call to adventure. Sounds like the start of a transformation arc. We think, here we go. This is where he wakes up. But the film isn't setting up a transformation. It's setting up a delivery. And there's a difference we won't feel until it's too late. Watch what happens to every person who tries to carry the future in this film. Not just what happens to them, watch the order. Julian dies first. She's the leader of the Fishes, the person with the plan, the network, the conviction that organized resistance can force the world to change. And she's shot through the windshield during a roadside ambush. No build-up, no farewell. 1 second she's laughing in the car, playing a game with a ping pong ball. The next second she's bleeding out, and the camera doesn't even have time to mourn her. The organizer is gone before the mission even starts. Jasper dies next, Theo's oldest friend, former political cartoonist, off the grid, grows weed in the woods, cracks terrible jokes, takes care of his wife who hasn't spoken since being tortured by the government years ago. Jasper is the memory of what things used to feel like. Warmth, humor, proof that someone once believed the world was worth laughing in. And when the fishes close in, he feeds his wife an overdose of quietus, takes one himself, and sits in his chair telling knock-knock jokes while they put a bullet in him. No hero's death, just a quiet removal. Luke takes over the fishes after Julian's death. Within hours, the mission stops being about Key and starts being about leverage. He orchestrated Julian's assassination himself. He wants the baby born under the fish's banner, not as a life, but as a symbol, a recruitment tool. Luke is what happens when someone decides the future needs an owner. He doesn't protect it, he tries to brand it. And he's killed during the siege at Bexhill on sea, buried under the same rubble as the system he was trying to replace. And then there's Theo. He gets Key to the rowboat, he gets her out, the mission is complete. But we'll come back to him. Julian, Jasper, Luke, Theo, conviction, memory, control. The hero. None of it crosses into the future. The film removes them the way a body rejects something it doesn't need anymore. So now the scaffolding is gone, and every person who tried to lead or protect or define what comes next was removed. The structure is empty, and the only person left is the only one the entire structure was built to keep out. Watch this. Key is a black immigrant in a country that cages immigrants, undocumented in a state that made documentation the price of being human. No political power, no allies. Every checkpoint, every propaganda poster, every detention center in this world was engineered to make someone like her disappear. That's the cold part. Here's the colder part. The government doesn't call it cruelty, it calls it security. Immigrants are processed, caged, and killed, and the billboards frame it as patriotism. Fertility testing is mandatory. Suicide kits, the government calls them quietus, are issued like aspirin. The state runs on xenophobia the way an engine runs on fuel, as the combustion that keeps everything moving. And the system works. Every piece of it is functioning exactly as designed, which means the only reason the future still exists is because the machinery couldn't quite finish the job. Now here's where the film does something people miss entirely. In P.D. James's original novel, the pregnant woman is Julian, white, British, connected to the protagonist. Cuarón read the premise and threw nearly everything else out. He moved the miracle from the center of power to the furthest margin. He made the mother a refugee. He made her black. He made her alone. That choice tells us everything. If the pattern of the film is removal, if everything from the old world has to be stripped away before the future can exist, then the person carrying the future can't come from inside that world. She has to come from outside everything the system was built to protect. That's not casting, that's the whole argument. Cuarón even stripped Theo of weapons for most of the film. No guns, no combat training, just a tired man in a dirty coat trying to get one person to one boat. Universal Pictures released the film in 2006 to modest box office and 3 Academy Award nominations, including Best Cinematography for Lubisky, and it found its audience years after most people ignored it. The children of men from that same Psalm 90 are finished. What comes next belongs to someone else. If you watched our video essay on The Truman Show, you'll recognize the mechanism. Truman doesn't break the system by fighting it. The system reveals what it was always doing, and the audience has to sit with the fact that they were watching it happen the whole time. Children of Men runs on the same circuit. The exclusion isn't hidden. The cages are on every street corner. We just don't register them as the point until it becomes impossible to look anywhere else. Think about how we actually decide who matters, not in a film, but in a system. It almost never happens with declaration. It happens with defaults, with who gets followed. Walk into an emergency room with a broken arm. If we look a certain way, speak a certain way, carry ourselves with a certain kind of familiarity, we're a patient. The system sees us. But if we don't fit the pattern, if our English is broken, if we hesitate at the intake desk like someone who's learned the institutions aren't safe, we become something else. A number in a queue that moves slower than the one next to it. Nobody announces this. The system just sorts us. And we don't notice. That's the real scary part. We don't notice because we're not the ones being sorted. Children of Men puts us inside that perspective for 2 hours and never once asks us to look at the person the system doesn't see. The rowboat. Theo has done everything the story has asked of him. He's carried Key through checkpoints, through firefights, through the siege at Bexel on the sea, Lubisky's 7.5-minute single-take battle sequence, one of the longest real-time combat shots in film history, where soldiers and rebels stop shooting just for a moment because they hear a baby crying and nobody alive remembers that sound. He got her to the water, he got her out. And he's bleeding. He took the wound earlier, quietly, almost in passing, and never mentioned it. There is no hero's injury, no dramatic collapse, he's just leaking out, slowly, while he rows. Key sees it before he does. Or maybe he already knows and there's nothing left to say. The fog is closing in, the ship tomorrow is somewhere ahead, and Theo's breathing gets shallow and his hands slow down, and the camera stays on him the way it stayed on him since the first frame. Except now it feels different. Now it feels like watching something to be set down. He doesn't realize he's been removed. There's no goodbye. The story just loosens its grip, the way we'd release something we'd been holding too long, and now only realize how heavy it was. And the last thing we hear over the credits after the screen goes black is the sound of children laughing. Not one child, children, plural. A sound that hasn't existed in this world for 18 years. That sound isn't for Theo, and it isn't for us. That's the thing about Children of Men. It's not sad because Theo dies. It's sad because we followed him for 2 hours and never questioned whether the story belonged to him. We needed him to be the one. Because if the hero, the person with the access, the connections, the familiar face, if he doesn't get to be part of what comes next, then maybe we don't either. We followed the wrong person. We didn't even notice, because noticing would have meant looking at the person we've been trained to look past. Children of Men isn't a story about saving the future. It's a story about who the future belongs to once we stop pretending it's ours. Cuarón built a film where the camera follows one person and the future follows another, and he trusted us not to notice until it was too late. The hero completed his role, the system did what it was designed to do, and the only person who made it through was the one neither of them accounted for. That's what the Prism is about. The story underneath the story. The one we don't see because we were never supposed to. Every film we break down on this channel has a version of this, a mechanism running underneath the thing we think we're watching. And once we see it, we can't unsee it. Not in the film, not outside of it either. If this changed how you see Children of Men, please subscribe. We do this every week. One film, one hidden mechanism, and the part no one talks about. Hit the bell so you don't miss what's next, and drop a comment. Tell us which film has a mechanism we haven't found yet. We read all of them. Thanks for watching. Until next time, please take care of yourself.